So HR, not the most loved child, but a definite necessity. So we are very fortunate today because we have Doug Murphy with us today, and he is going to be talking about everything HR. He is a graduate of University of Maryland. He works for PuzzleHR and has nearly 2 decades of HR experience. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about is employees today. And I know a lot of you are feeling that it's hard to find good employees. It's hard to retain good employees. It's hard to keep the ones you really love. So if you don't have a whole hour to spend with us, I'm going to give you a 30-second idea on how to retain your employees. 1, give them 50 weeks paid vacation a year. 2, a huge holiday bonus. I guarantee you no one will ever leave you again. You will have your employees for life. But if those options don't work for you, I'm going to let Doug Murphy go ahead and take it over and talk about things that might work better with your budget or your workflow. So with no further ado, Doug, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know if I can compete with that, Rhonda. So let me begin and let me pull up my screen. We'll get this up there so people don't have to stare at my face the entire time. All right. Could everybody see the screen okay? Take that as a yes?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to start today with what I think is the best title ever for HR, because just like Rhonda said, it is the unloved kind of stepchild of the business world. Is HR, who cares, right? So we have that in both ways, right? Who cares about HR, but also which of your employees truly care about the company? So it's a nice topic because we'll try to make HR as fun as possible today. Sometimes it's hard to do, but I think we're up to the challenge. We can blow right through the introduction here because Rhonda did a great job of introducing me. And today we're really going to dive in to HR. And I'll start with, why did I get into HR consulting? Why did I probably about 20 years ago or so, I was the first hire of a startup company. So just like a lot of you guys on this call are listening to this, if you're a business owner or one of the early kind of employees of an organization, you learn by trial and error, right? You may hire some people that didn't work out, make some business moves that didn't work out the way you think, maybe even changed your website, your logo, your catchphrase, all sorts of things. You may learn something watching TV, and an idea comes in your head when you're sleeping or in the shower. So growing a company is hard. And then continuing, once you've established a company, to continue that growth is not an easy thing to do. And most people take HR and they throw it on the back burner. They say, I'm too small, I have 3 employees. And then it's, we only have 8 employees, we're a startup. Then next thing you know, they have 15 employees, 20 employees, 30 employees, and they're 5 years, 10 years deep. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, I have a startup company. I'm like, no, you don't. You've got 20 employees, you've been around for 8 years. You're not a startup anymore. But HR hasn't been brought to the forefront. So throughout my time really learning everything that didn't work, I realized that one of the biggest resources and biggest expenses of a company is people, are humans. So picture human resources not as, the person sitting there in their office asking for your PTO policy, but really it is the money spent on the humans, on the human capital. So today I really want to focus on how could HR move the business forward, right? How could it be an ROI? How could it be a very effective part of the business? Not something we have to do, something we want to do better to grow our company, make it more productive, make it more profitable. So with that, and I'm going to lean on my colleagues here at PayMaster. So I have my screen, full screen here, so I can make sure you guys can see everything. If there's a question, if there's a chat, Rick or somebody hop on in, just let me know what it is, and I'll go ahead and address those as they come up. So today, we're going to focus on 4 main areas. So all I got to do is make it through 4 sections with me. So the first we're going to talk about is just one big concept. And if you have an attention span like me and can only make it through a few minutes, I'll hit that next. Make sure you pay attention and take a note there. It's probably the most important part of today is just learning this one concept. Then we'll move on to the compliance side of HR. So that's the paperwork, the scary stuff, the lawsuits, the audits, all the stuff that you kind of have to do, but no one ever wants to. But we need to talk about it because it's reality. And the last thing I want any of you to do is waste money. We don't want an employee to take money that they don't deserve. We don't want the government to take money from you. We want you guys to keep that money that you work so hard for. After that, we'll move on to productivity of the employees. And this is more of the fun part, the culture part, the everyone moving together. This is where the company can make more money. And then at the end, we're going to talk about some hard costs tied in with HR, where potentially if you do HR correctly, you can see right clear as day how much money you guys are saving. So sound good? Easy enough? 4 little areas, and we'll go through this in a pretty effective manner, and we'll have you out the door by 2 o'clock. All right, so let's start with the biggest concept of HR. So this is called the Civil Rights Act. Promise it's the only law we're going to talk about today. But the Civil Rights Act is very important. There's a lot of aspects to it. So I'm going to dumb it down a little bit. The only thing that I'm going to talk about today for the Civil Rights Act is the key portion called the burden of proof. So a lot of times when we talk about HR, right, we have a business owner, and then we have someone who handles HR. Sometimes it's a husband and wife, sometimes it's a parent and a child, sometimes it's the first employee, sometimes the company's grown and we have a whole HR department, right? But the burden of proof ultimately falls on the business owner. So let's just talk about that really quickly. What that ultimately means, and it wasn't always this way. Originally, when the Civil Rights Act came out back in the 60s, when it came out, it put the burden of proof on the employee. So let's just picture a made-up example. If I'm an employee and I was threatened, harassed, bullied, it was just awful. It was a terrible work experience. I quit, and then say I try to sue the business owner. I try to file a claim against them. They're going to say, oh yeah? Prove that you were threatened. Prove you were harassed. It was very hard for an employee to do that. It was he said, she said. So what happened was business owners got away with a lot. It's a good day to be a business owner back then. Then what happened was people said, this isn't fair. We got to side with the employees. So the burden of proof got flipped. So now, in the last 2-3 decades, the burden of proof has fallen on the owner. So now, say an employee leaves an organization and they were treated like gold. Business owner took care of them, let them leave to pick their kids up. Someone's sick, no, go take care of your kid. Take time off. Don't worry about it. I'll still pay you for it. They need a down payment on their house. They're short on their bills. The owner goes, here's an extra $300. Let me take care of that for you. The owner buys them lunches. They give them office supplies. The owner is bending over backwards, taking care of their employee. The employee quits. The employee then just makes up a bunch of stuff. I was threatened. I was bullied. I was harassed. Where now that employee is correct until the business owner proves otherwise. So then they go to the business owner and say, prove that you did not bully and harass this person. Now it's a little trickier. Now it's tough. So now it is a very hard time to be a business owner or an HR director because everything's got to be flawless. Paperwork, documents, trainings, all of these things have to be in line to protect not only from a marginally legitimate claim, but also just some frivolous made up things by the ex-employees. So this is something that we really need to understand if we're a business owner. All the risk is on you. But if you're an HR director, an HR manager, anybody with the title of manager, you have a lot of responsibility to this. Owners got that liability, but you have responsibility to make sure everything's handled correctly. So HR really is a team effort between the HR division, which could be one person or 10 people, and that business owner or that executive team. Okay? So that's that big concept. That's all you got time for today. You made it. So now let's move on. So let's get into the compliance side of this. So this is the not as fun part to talk about. So I've realized that the best way over about 20 years of doing this is story time. Story time with the HR guy, Doug, here. So story time with Doug is going to start with the employee handbook. We all know an employee handbook. Most of you have probably received one from your company. I would bet that 99% of you have never even read it. I've been in HR for 20 years. I don't think I've ever read any employee handbook cover to cover. So the thing about it is, most people don't read them, but it's crucially important. Why? So let's talk about the compliance side of it. And then later, we'll talk about the productivity side of it. So these are just a few basic, easy, tangible items to talk about. But that employee handbook, you're going to have in there all the policies of the organization, right? We're going to have laws, state laws, federal laws, and policies. So let's take, why is it so mission critical to get it correct? Let's talk about it from that compliance viewpoint. So let's talk about an excavator. So the big, usually yellow and black machines, you see them on the side of the road sometime, right? Big construction vehicle. This happened to a client and nicest business owner on earth. And I'll say that because honestly, a lot of small to medium-sized business owners, they're super nice, hardworking people that took the plunge to start a company. And usually they did it because they didn't like the big corporate place they used to work. And they wanted to be a good experience for their staff. So this gentleman who owned this company had his employee handbook. From the looks of it, most likely either stole it off Google and then just tweaked it or put his logo on it, or took it from a past company or his buddy's company, printed it and said, here's my handbook. The problem with this was there was a gentleman one day who flipped over the excavator. So picture the machine, falls over, gentleman gets hurt. Not too bad, jams his shoulder, hit his head a little bit, he was fine, and ultimately. They call workers' compensation out because what they do is they do a drug and alcohol test before they pay a claim out. They come out, took a little while to get there, but they come out later that day. They test, and the gentleman tests positive for alcohol. Business owner immediately goes, obviously you can't drink, can't be drunk, and obviously just says it even all over the machine. You cannot operate heavy machinery under the influence of alcohol. So guy drinks, flips over an excavator. Of course he should be fired. I think he should be fired. Everybody on earth probably thinks this guy should be fired. So what they do is they terminate him that day. Sorry, obviously, we got a proof here. You drank, flipped over the excavator, you're fired. Problem is, this gentleman doesn't have a lot of money, minimum wage type guy, blue collar guy. And what he ends up doing is one of his friends said, you might be able to sue them. The guy's like, what are we talking about? They go through the situation. He hires, we'll say, youhavealawyer.com guy. These lawyers only take a case if they know they're going to win, because they don't charge anything up front. They only charge money if they're going to win, because they're not going to waste their time and not make money. That lawyer goes to that business owner and goes, it's called discovery, says, let me see that employee handbook. Let me see that drug and alcohol report. He flips through the handbook, immediately gets to the policy about drugs and alcohol and goes, I'll take the case. The owner immediately knows he's in trouble because he knows this guy's only taking the case he's going to win. Long story short, policy pretty much said, can't drink at work, can't be legally drunk. The gentleman punched out of work, went off premise to his lunch break, had some beers, God knows how many, but had some beers with his buddy, comes back to work, punches back in. He did not drink on the clock. He did not drink at work. That drug and alcohol test had him below the legal limit. He was not legally drunk. The gentleman, by their policy, did nothing wrong to be fired. So not only should he not have lost his job, he should be on workers' comp and getting paid to sit home till he recovers, and then he should have his job back. When he put the lawsuit in, they put a bunch of other baloney in to jack the price up. He was a minority, so they put in some things about that. He was discriminated against and so on. So all of this happened when a guy drank, flipped over an excavator, but their document was wrong. Company got screwed over. So these are the things that happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then one day something happens out of the blue. So this is where HR needs to be done. And this is the boring and scary part of HR, but it's got to be done perfectly and custom to every company.
Doug, can I ask you,
rules. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a quick question for
Sure
one of my clients?
Yeah.
They fired somebody because this person was stealing from them. And when their manager fired them, the manager kind of lost his temper because the employee was defensive and the manager started cussing at him. So now the guy is saying, I feel intimidated, quack, 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 even though he stole from this employer. Does he have a leg to stand on if he goes to an attorney and says, I felt attacked, I felt intimidated? I mean, do they have to put in their policy, as a manager, you cannot cuss at your employees? I mean, how do you stop that from becoming liability?
Yeah, and no, there's definitely liability. And unfortunately, and this is the part I hate, is there's liability even when nothing happens. So you've got to be so proactive. So there's definitely policies in place there that could be in writing to protect, but a lot of that situation comes actually onto managerial training. Most people do not manage or train their managers correctly. They usually give one of their best employees or longest term employees the title manager when there's a gap without actually training them. Where if you put a little bit of resources into coaching a manager on critical conversations is one of them, that manager goes into that conversation with a completely different skill set and viewpoint and doesn't lose their cool, and it's a non-issue.
Right.
So that's another area. Like at Puzzle, people can spit out handbooks and job descriptions and all that stuff, but that managerial leadership and training kind of skills, it's more relevant now than ever. We all know about the Great Recession, right? People are leaving and no one can find anybody. And it says, McDonald's is hiring for $18 or $20 an hour. And you're like, what the heck? So, and the reason these things are happening, all different theories, but if you picture kind of a stack of all the employees, and when COVID hit and this whole generation, say they were 50, 55, 60, they all retired maybe 5-10 years earlier than they're going to. Now we lost all that knowledge, all that legacy knowledge and leadership. So they took all these middle level managers and threw them up to that corporate level too soon. Then, because that middle management and entry level manager jobs were gone, we took baseline employees with no leadership skills and threw them into leadership roles. And now there's no one at the bottom. So we're paying $20 an hour for someone to work a cash register. So the problem there is with this new change in the last 2 or 3 years, training leaders is more important than ever because they don't have the experience they used to have.
Right.
So that's another area of HR that kind of goes in conjunction, right? We need our policies, but we also need people to know how to enforce them and to be consistent and know how to hold conversations. So that's a great question.
Did you say $18 an hour at McDonald's?
Yeah, I saw a sign the other day. I was driving. I was on vacation, and it was in the middle. I was somewhere between Michigan and Indiana. I don't remember where the sign was, but actually my son pointed it out, who's 9.
Wow.
$18 an hour.
That and a discount on your Biggie Fry. That might be a retirement plan, huh?
I'm thinking of bailing now. I mean, I've been talking about HR for 20 years. But yeah, so that's the mission critical point that we're at right now in today's world, is not only getting everything right, but then equipping our staff of how to handle situations. All right. So if you look on the second thing on this slide here, it talks about job descriptions, right? And I just picked the easy things to talk about today, the tip of the iceberg of HR. But you need job descriptions to be flawless because there's 2 P's. You see them right there, policy and performance. Technically, that's the only way you can discipline an employee. So If someone is screwing up policy, right? They're showing up late. We have a policy that says you can't in the handbook, right? Then you can discipline the policy. But a lot of people don't mess up any policy. They're just not good at their job. They're not performing well. They're not excelling. They're not doing great with customer service or sales or whatever it may be. So we need a job description, which is not a company-wide document like a handbook. It's specific to each individual role. We need those written better than ever because we need to be able to set performance expectations. So now we can discipline to performance. We can coach them. And if we can't work them up, we can work them out the door safely. Because if you fire someone who is not performing well, they can come back and say, I had no notice, no warning. I thought I was doing a great job. You need to show that you documented it, that you had performance or coaching meetings with them. And kind of like a 3-strike, right? We sat down, we talked about the performance, we put them on a performance improvement plan, and we gave them a chance to get better. When they didn't, we sat down and said, hey, you got better here and here. Here, you're still failing miserably. If we don't pick it up in the next 30 days, we're going to have to part ways. Now you've given them a chance to excel. And if they don't, now we can safely let them out the door. There's that. There's some legal items in job descriptions. There's things for American Disabilities Act in job descriptions. So even basic documentation now has gotten so custom to each business, you got to get it done right. So the last area of compliance that I want to hit on is OSHA and safety. So this has always been around, right? OSHA's been around for a long time, and it's always been to enforce safety regulation. So originally it was to come out to actually prevent people from getting hurt. OSHA came out for a great reason. So picture someone working in a factory. If all of a sudden their hands are getting burned, their hair getting caught in a machine, OSHA's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. All these people are getting hurt and dying on job sites. If you have a Fed ID number, you got to follow our rules a little bit here. So they enacted the OSHA Occupational Safety Health Act and said, let's put some rules in place to protect people. Then, as people were, and injuries and deaths honestly started going down. OSHA did a great thing. And then all of a sudden, they go, wait, how can we enforce people to make changes? We fine them, right? Compensation and monetary fines and so on curb behavior. So then they go, okay, well, if we come out and we threaten a business owner with a $100 fine, they're not going to change anything. It might cost them $300 to fix whatever they want. So let's put ridiculous fines out there. Let's say if they don't do this, it's 10 grand. They don't do that, it's 6 grand. They don't do that, it's 10 grand. Okay, now it's a $26,000 fine, but we'll give them 30 days to fix it. Business owners immediately fixed everything. OSHA comes back out 30 days later and go figure. Everything's fixed. They go, great, no fine, good job. OSHA still did their job. They scared the crap out of them with a big fine, but they didn't actually fine them. They gave them time to fix everything. Then progressing through time, OSHA becomes partially self-funded in a lot of states, government short on capital. So go figure, they go, let's just fine them. They don't even know they need a safety manual or all these different items, but let's just fine them. It could be a great revenue stream. Government thought of a way to make some money. They thought of another revenue stream. So what we want to make sure is every business not only is offering a safe work environment to make sure their employees don't get hurt, but also to save them money. Most people think about the fine thing, but think about the productivity side. If one of your best employees gets hurt, you got to deal with workers' comp, you got to deal with insurance, you got to deal with that employee being out. Maybe he's hurt pretty badly. You got to deal with a family who's suffering with an injured family member. It's a lot. Then you also are missing your best employee for a while till they recover. So we want to make sure we're safe. But also compliance, we don't want you to spend money you don't have to. So why I put artist on here from Little Story Time with Doug is outside of West Palm Beach, Florida, which is where I am, we had a gentleman I went and met with. He was 72 years old. I'll never forget it because he told me like 12 times. And I was talking about things. I said, hey, how's your ocean safety? He goes, don't get me started. I was like, hey, what? He goes, I am still paying fines from them. I dropped my pen. I was like, what? You have like 16 employees or 18 employees and you're an artist. Now, don't picture, like Bob Ross sitting there with like the watercolors drawing little trees. He had like a little shop and a little garage that kind of had like some welding stuff. And there was some injury prone, machines in there. But I said, OSHA came to bother you? He goes, yeah, they pulled me randomly. I asked them how they found me. They pulled their NAICS code and it was metalworking. So picture guys on high rises building these big iron and steel columns. They were in the same code as this guy was in because he did like molding and kind of machines that he had to make custom, structures and whatever he was doing. So he ends up getting fined by OSHA. They came in, they go, we need to see the posters on the wall and your safety manual. Those are the first two things everybody needs. Safety manual. A lot of people don't have it. You need it. So he goes, I don't have a safety manual. OSHA said we kind of take it as a middle finger if someone doesn't have the basic OSHA safety protocol. So they do a magnifying glass inspection. So what they end up doing, they go through his whole shop. They brought decibel readers to turn on a machine to see if it was loud enough to require personal protection, earplugs. They went through and fined him for everything. The fines, I don't remember the exact number. It was close to $100,000. He's like, I don't even have anywhere near that much money. I close if you're really finding me this. They worked with them. They got it to like, I think it was $36,000 paid over a year. So it was $3,000 a month. He had to spend $36,000 because he didn't have some basic OSHA paperwork, and he's an artist. So that's just another ridiculous example of someone who's been in business for probably 50 years and never had something happen until it did. So that's the scary stuff. I don't love talking about it, but you just need to be aware of it. Whether you have a few employees or you have a few hundred, we need documents and trainings and everything to be correct. And if I'm an HR director of a large company or even a small company, I have 17,000 fires I'm putting out every day. Me taking legitimately 30, 40 hours and tagging in labor law attorneys to get this stuff done is not what I want to do. But unfortunately, it's stuff that needs to be done. So if you're an owner, keep in mind, we got to get this stuff right. And it's not fair to make your HR director do all this. If you're an HR person, ask for help. Wave the white flag and tell your owner, I can't do all this. And also deal with day-to-day fires that come on my desk. I have 40 emails before I even show up to work, right? So that's the compliance side. Let's all breathe. Take a moment. And we'll move into the more fun side. So let's talk about some of the same documents, but on the productivity side. So if I'm a business owner, I'm going, I got to protect my company. I don't want to get sued or lawsuits or audits. I don't want to waste money. Okay, that makes sense. Now, how does this actually help me move my business forward? People talk to me at PuzzleHR. They say, who are your best clients? I go, forward-thinking business owners. I don't care if they got 1 employee, 100 employees, or 1,000 employees. I want a business that's trying to move forward, trying to grow, trying to be better every single day, not someone complacent. Complacent business owner goes, hey, I should probably do these documents, don't get sued. Forward-thinking business owner goes, I can excel this company. I can turn this into a career for my staff. They love this place. It's amazing. We keep growing and getting more engagement. And I'm growing. That doesn't scare me because everything's done right on the HR side. So let's shift back to that handbook. We talked about needing it for the policy, the excavator guy, but let's talk about it on the employee productivity side. So let's talk about Carrie. Carrie's a young lady, one of the best employees of an organization. Carrie had more hats than you can imagine. And if Carrie left that company, they were in trouble. She had more knowledge of the company, the vendors, the processes, the systems. And this is an area where a lot of companies have a Carrie. You may even be the Carrie. The person who arguably knows more about the inner workings of the company than the owner himself. Owner's big picture guy moving forward. Who is running all that operational stuff? So with Carrie, every single time the business owner walked past, goes, oh, God, she's on Facebook again. Her computer screen's Facebook. Her phone is Facebook. I'm like, you're logged into Facebook on 2 devices at once? Carrie's outside on a smoke break on Facebook. Carrie's sitting in her car. Don't know what she's doing. Probably on Facebook. This is pissing the owner off so much, but Carrie's also his best employee. So he's kind of letting it go. And then eventually, sitting there talking to his wife at night, he's like, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm paying Carrie a good amount of money, and she is on Facebook all the time. Wife goes to the owner and goes, what'd she say when you told her about it? Let's take a guess. Owner goes, I've never even told her. I've never had that critical conversation. So sometimes owners are scared to discipline or talk to their own employees. Sometimes managers are. So is there a training aspect? Yes. But you also need a policy. So now we put in a new policy in that handbook that talks about Facebook, social media, personal cell phone usage. Now the book is the bad guy. So now you're empowering the owner or the manager to call Carrie into the office and say, hey, Carrie, I saw you on Facebook. Remember the policy we talked about? We put in the handbook you signed off on? Hey, you're my best employee. This is your verbal warning. I'm going to document it. But Carrie, just don't go on Facebook. Don't make me discipline you again. You know, everyone's got to live by the same rules. Carrie then goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I won't do it again. Whole different conversation because the book is the bad guy. The policy is the bad guy, right? Then we see Carrie a few days later on Facebook again during work hours. So what do? Call her in the office and say, Carrie, I got to write you up. You're going to get fired over Facebook? Why don't you leave your phone in your car, check it on your brakes, right? And don't log in on the company computer. Carrie goes, no problem. The next day, first time in 8 years, Carrie knocks on the owner's door and goes, hey, it's about noon, 1 o'clock. What should I do this afternoon? Owner goes, what do you mean? She goes, I finished all my tasks for the day. Whoa. First time in 8 years. Carrie did 8 hours of work in 4 hours. Why? She wasn't on Facebook. Carrie now has half of her day to do more work, which also means he's double paid her for the last 8 years. So he goes, you know what? Big believer in handwritten correspondence, which I thought was kind of cool. Carrie, around Christmas time, write handwritten holiday cards to all of our best clients. I've wanted to do it for years. We've never had time to do it. You have time now. Carrie sends them out. 2 clients call and thank for the card, jog their memory about the business. They called and placed orders. The 2 orders almost paid Carrie's salary. Carrie is more productive because we set a rule and held her to it. That can be extrapolated out to 1,000 different things. If I walk into a restaurant, I have a 9 and 10-year-old, I walk into a restaurant with them, sitting up on the counter. Now there's dirty tables and a dirty floor. I may turn around and leave, or I may suffer through my meal and never come back again. But if I walk in and the owner had policies and training and said, this is what you do when there's no customers, this all has to be clean before you do this, you greet your clients this way. I walk through the door with my kids and go, hey, welcome to wherever. Come on in. This table is the greatest for kids. He can watch the TV. We got Sports Center around here. We got things to draw on. 2 little things. My kids will order the same meal and ask to go there 300 times before they get sick of it. So not only did they lose my business once, they probably lost me going there 30 times in the next few months. They lost thousands of dollars because they didn't have a policy and trained their staff at all on customer service. Little things that people are complacent with, HR can have an impact on. So we need to have all of these things in place to move a business forward and get those employees more productive and more engaged. Back to the topic of who cares. The owner cares about getting sued. The owner cares about wasting money. We need the employees to care about this company. Those same job descriptions, we need to set expectations for the employees so they know what they should be doing. They know what they're going to be graded on and reported on and held kind of disciplined to make sure they earn their wages and potentially make more money eventually. When we talk about this productivity and performance, a key concept to know, you're always going to have kind of your bell curve of your employees, right? You got your kind of ABC players. The best employees, you got a few of them. The bulk of the staff is in the middle. And then we got those C players that probably shouldn't be there, The problem is those C players, they don't know how bad they are. The whole company knows that, say, Joe is the worst employee. He's late, he's lazy, he gets in fights, he rolls his eyes, he gets complaints from customers. Everyone knows Joe's terrible. Know who doesn't know that? Joe. So we need to make sure that we're working with those people to either work them out or get them better. Because sometimes once Joe realizes he doesn't want to be the worst, maybe he picks his game up and gets better. Now he's worth that money. So those are the areas that HR can really, really help. And there's a bunch of tools to do this, right? When I come in from PuzzleHR to clients, a lot of times I say, what does your performance management system look like? PayMaster has some of the greatest HR technology out there. So what I want to do is use it all. I want to make sure everyone has it, first of all, right? If a client is working with PayMaster, for instance, and doesn't have their HR technology, add it. Then what we need to do is make sure it's utilized, right? Now we have documents. Now we have performance management. Now we have all of these areas at our fingertips, and it's humming along and doing a lot of work for us because we took the time to implement it, right? PuzzleHR comes in and we sit there and go, okay, we need to do an engagement survey of this company. Let all the employees be really honest with us. Let us score everything, give a detailed report and say, hey, we're good here, we're good here. This is okay. We got to address this, but here's the fire. So let's work on this to get the employees more happy, more productive. Let's get this company moving the right way. You already think it's good? Let's really amp it up and get this productivity. We want your employees to be cheerleaders. We want them to love your company as much as an owner does. So they go to the best employee of a competitor or their friend that's a top-notch candidate, and they go, you got to come work here. They treat us like gold. We all work as a team. We're growing. It's exciting. We want your staff to recruit for you. Recruiting is at an all-time high right now in terms of how much it costs because it's so hard to find people. The best companies I work with barely even need recruiters because their employees are recruiting for them because they love that company that much. So that's what we want to work on to help you grow. You have some of the greatest technology at your fingertips, then you address it with some HR strategy, and now you have a really good kind of recipe for success. So the last area we'll cover in the last 10 minutes or so, and then we'll have time for some questions in the last 10 minutes, is I always say knowledge is money. So I put a few examples on here that some of you may know, and some of you may not know what the heck any of this means. So SUTA, state unemployment tax, right? Some states call it reemployment tax. There's all sorts of different terms. So on here, what I did was I just put some percentages and numbers. I did this based out of Florida just because that's where I am, but every single state, depending on where you are, has this. So for instance, if we look at state unemployment tax, first thing we need to understand is what does it mean? What does it really mean, unemployment tax? A lot of people think if an employee doesn't work there anymore, they file for unemployment, the government pays them. Accurate to some degree. But where's the government get all this money? It's from unemployment taxes. Unemployment tax is one of the only controllable taxes that you have. So for instance, the first question to ask yourself is, what is your unemployment tax rate? And if you don't know it off the top of your head, you may want to look into it because this is where this knowledge is money concept comes from. If I meet with 100 clients, probably 3, 4, 5 of them have any idea what their unemployment tax rate is. So if you do, awesome. Then we need to understand what it really means. So in the state of Florida, the wage-based limit is $7,000. What that really means is you pay unemployment taxes on the first $7,000 an employee earns every calendar year. So say you hire Joe. We'll pick on Joe again. Joe gets his first paycheck in January. It's $1,000. That's all he's earned that year. You owe your taxes on the $1,000 from a business perspective. The second check, another $1,000, you owe it. Once Joe's made 7 grand, the tax rate on Joe is 0 the rest of the year. He hit that 7 grand limit. But say after 3 months, Joe's made 7 grand and Joe quits or you fire him. And then you hire me. Doug comes in. Doug has earned 0. So now you owe the same taxes you paid on Joe, even though I'm filling his role, you owe on me. So picture if you turned over the same position 4 times in the year, you paid 4 times the taxes you needed to if you kept that same employee all year. So that's one thing. Turnover costs money, not just money. It costs hard dollars of just taxes. Then we talk about the rate. I have people in Florida that are paying 0.01, 0.1%. These really low rates, they're spending $7 per employee per year. Pennies, you'll never even notice it in a business. But then I have some employees spending over 5%. So some people are spending $7. Some are spending almost $400 per person. If you got 100 employees and you're spending $400 per person instead of $7 per person, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars spent. And the way to control it is all based on mathematics. You don't lose unemployment. So for instance, a business pays in unemployment taxes of 5 grand. No one ever files unemployment, or whenever they file, you have all the documents to win to say that guy shouldn't get unemployment. He was fired for just cause, or he quit. Employee doesn't win the unemployment claim if you do it correctly. So if the government never pays out a claim because your HR is so strong, you're never going to lose a claim, your tax rate goes down every year. Government's sitting on that 5 grand, they don't need much more of your money. That rate goes from a 2 to a 1 to a 0.5 to a 0.1. You're spending next to nothing because your HR is so strong. You can save tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of your organization, by just knowing how unemployment tax works, and then also having the documentation and knowledge of how to win every single claim. Okay? So that same concept goes into workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is the most similar tax, we'll say, insurance, to state unemployment tax or insurance. It's the only other tax that you can control. Social Security, Medicare, you hear FICA, you hear all these FUTA, you hear these taxes, you're stuck paying them, right? And that's the cool thing about PayMaster. You don't have to worry about it. They pay it for you. All this complicated calculations, they do. But you can control from an HR perspective your unemployment taxes and workers' comp to some degree. So here's the idea on workers' compensation. Most states, every single employee, there's a classification code. Meaning, if someone sits at a desk all day, they're not a big risk to get hurt. You might spend, I'm going to make up a number, 30 cents per every $100 that they earn. Pennies. If I'm a roofer, instead of 30 cents, it might be $20 of every 100. 20% of what you pay that guy, on top of what you pay him, you're paying the workers' comp insurance. Because if a roofer gets hurt, it's going to cost some money. Then on top of that, you have a modification rate. So on there, you see the 0.6 mod versus 1.2. I made these up. But what they really are is if you have some injuries, and they could be fraudulent, workers' comp insurance is paying out claims. They need to charge you more. Just like you got in a car accident, your rate goes up. So if you go to a 1.2 mod, that means that $20 you're paying that 20% to a roofer, you take it, you multiply it by 1.2. It's a 20% surcharge. If you have no claims, your rate goes down. So I have clients that are 0.6. That means they have a 40% discount on their workers' compensation. Some industries, that could be 50 grand a year. I have other people at a 1.2% mod, so a 20% surcharge, that could be 20, 30 grand extra they're spending. So you got 2 business owners, same employee count, same industry. One guy has a lot of turnover, some fake injuries and claims. This guy may be spending, no joke, $100,000 a year in taxes and workers' comp more than the guy across the street because he invested 10, 20 grand in his HR and got it all done correctly. So these are just some of the other areas that kind of fall under the big umbrella of HR to make sure that you're monitoring them correctly, because they could save you a ton of money. So with that said, I have on here, and again, we'll share information with everybody here. So I just have obviously my name up there. I have my cell phone number. It's a Connecticut phone number because I've had it for like 20 years. I do live in South Florida outside of West Palm Beach, but that is my cell phone. You can call me, you can text me, whatever's easiest. You can reach out to me if you have any HR questions, strategy, ideas, anything you want to talk about. I am here as a partner of PayMaster. We want to give you all the support you need. Then you also have my email address there, doug@puzzlehr.com. Obviously, just like most people, I'm tied to my email pretty much around the clock. So feel free to email me if you'd like. And I'm very quick with my responses because I'm one of those OCD people. You see the little red thing, the little red thing on your iPhone? It says you have a text or a phone call or an email. I start like shaking until I address it. So I will get back to you very, very quickly. So I'm going to minimize this a little bit just so that way I can see the conversation. Actually, no.